Hello everybody, we're here today at the Drum Brother with John Ramsay. He's a great drummer and teacher, and he's the chair of the Percussion Department at Berklee College of Music.
That is a big question. Let me say first that I'm still, although I'm in my fourth year as a chair now, at times it still feels like a new role for me and a new job, and there's so much to learn and to know and to do that it's a big job. And you probably know that Berklee has, on average, about 640 to 650 drum students, right, which is the size of some schools in some places, or music departments. But we, in the percussion department, we have about average 640 students a semester, and a faculty of about 45.
That's included both percussion and drum set, right?
It includes actually 6 principal instruments, drum set, and that's by far the largest instrument family. Say, we have vibraphone principal, we have a marimba principal, we have a hand percussion principal, we have a total percussion principal, which is like orchestral percussion or classical percussion in a lot of other institutions. And our newest principal instrument is steel pan.
I heard about it.
Yeah, so there's actually, within that 640 percussion students, there are
several
those, and I mean, like I say, the majority of those are drum set. So you can imagine just, with that many students, there's a lot to deal with. Advising, matriculation issues like, what classes should I take? And, even with that now, with those 6 principal instruments, we have 12 majors, right? We've got the performance major, we've got professional music, we've got music education, we've got music business, we've got music therapy is a new major, we got composition, we got writing, production, and what's it, CWP, contemporary writing and production. There's electronic production and design. These are all major. So, when you have all that in the mix, everybody's needs are different. Talking about students, everybody's passion is different. Some people are passionate about playing the instrument. Other people are only really playing the instrument because it's required of them to do whatever, music production or engineering. But not always, because in some cases there's guys who are in, say, music production and engineering, but they still want to play, and they still want to learn as much as they can about the instrument too. So it's a pretty diverse world. It's a great job teaching, and I still enjoy it. I still love it. But after about 27 years of doing that same thing, I was thinking like, I'd like to do something different.
Change a little bit.
Yeah. What else could I do? Well, let me see. I can't go to work for the post office, and so the opportunity came along at a time when I was really looking to change my work sort of routine, and I was looking for a challenge, and it really it really is one, And what I was about to say, the irony of that is that, this job is really, it's an administrative position, so it really takes away from being a player, or a drummer. And even teaching did to a degree, because the focus is not just getting up every day and, okay, what do I want to practice today? What do I want to work on? What do I need to work on? But the focus becomes something else other than just being a player. So that's a hard balance to find. And the only way really that I try to balance it now is that I come in here most days. I was going to say every day, but that wouldn't be true. I come in here most days at between 8 and 8:30, and I practice. And up until about 10 o'clock. But at 10 o'clock, I feel like, okay, the day job starts. So at 10 o'clock, or 10:10 or 10:15,
start the emails.
I come over to the desk and I turn on the computer. But if I tried to practice at the end of the day, it wouldn't work, because after a day of constant emails and meetings and all the stuff, when I get out of here at 5, well, today's a good day because I won't get out of here at 5. I'll go to a rehearsal after. So that's good, actually.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know that if I don't get my practice in early in the day, I'm not going to have the energy
to do it
later. So that's the challenge of being an administrator or even a faculty person. If your sort of prime directive is to play, it's difficult to do that.
Yeah.
But I think that's also the reality of being a musician these days. To be able to live off just playing is sometimes not easy. Okay. Well, you have long-ended questions that really have long answers, but my time with Art Blakey was split between kind of two capacities. When I first started with Art Blakey, I was the second drummer in a big band. That was 1980, and the big band was really a small big band. It was 11 pieces, but it was Art and I both playing drum set. Most people would say, yeah, you play.
At the same time too?
Yeah, at the same time, yeah. Most people say, hey, what, you play percussion? No, it's 2 drum sets. And Art would always say when people ask him, hey, why do you have 2 drummers? And he would say, if 2 horn players can play together, 2 drummers can play together. See, that concept is, it's only unusual in, say, in Western music, because African music, Afro-Cuban music, there's 3, 4, or more, 5, 10 percussionists. But that was my first role with him in the big band that consisted of, was Billy Pierce on tenor. It had 2 sets of brothers in the band, Winton and Branford Marcellus. And Winton, of course, played trumpet. Branford played alto and baritone. And then Bobby Watson was the other alto player. And then Kevin and Robin Eubanks. So Kevin played guitar and Robin played trombone. And then there was the trumpet player from Art's small band prior to the big band, Valery Ponomarev. He was a Russian guy, a trumpet player from Russia. And then James Williams played piano. Charles Fambro was the bass player. And like I said, Art and myself. So my time in the big band was a little bit short-lived because we did like a tour of Europe that lasted for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. We started in Sweden and we did all over Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden. Then we probably went to your country, to Italy. We did like, Bari and Ravenna and Brindisi and, a bunch of little towns actually, where they just, they're like little olive villages, There was one town, I can't even remember the name, where our dressing room was the police station.
No way.
Yeah, because it was like in the town square, right?
Wow.
And there was one government building, and then the stage was right outside the building.
Oh my
right?
God.
So inside where our dressing room was the police department.
Yeah.
But we played a lot of those little towns in Italy. I remember it was, there was a guy who did booking, Alberto Alberti. He was like a legendary booking agent in Italy. So, and then we would go to Germany and do, several cities or dates in Germany, Belgium. So it was great because it was my first time seeing Europe, and I was playing with Art Blakey. It was a time actually we played in Torino, in a big soccer stadium.
Wow.
And
for jazz festival.
Yes, I don't remember the name of it, but I remember it was in Torino in a big soccer festival. Because that day we were in the hotel having lunch, and I came down to the restaurant and saw Art at a table with a guy, So of course I went over to the table. And he said in his Art Blakey voice, he said, "John, you know who this is?" And I said, "No." I said, "It's Kenny Clark."
Wow.
It's Kenny Clark. So I'm sitting there with Art Blakey and Kenny Clark, and Art said, "Hey, Kenny, you want to sit in with us tonight? You want to play with us tonight?" Kenny Clark's like, "Sure, why not?" So that night, the big band was Art Blakey on drums, Kenny Clark on drums, and me on drums in the back. And I'm sitting there, I'm going like, that's Art Blakey. That's Kenny Clark.
I better swing.
No, I'm like, what am I doing here? And that same night, that was a big festival, so Max Roach's group, M Boom, was playing the next night. So as I'm up there with those two guys, right, I look over and through the stage back entrance, I see Max Roach walking across the soccer field. And then like Omar Clay and Roy Brooks and Freddie Waits. These were all the guys in Max's percussion ensemble. And Warren Smith. And so I'm like, oh man, this is like crazy. And then Roy Haynes was there that night too, because I think he played before us. So, and that's the way it was. And you know, in Europe with all those jazz festivals, they're always, you know, if you go to Montreux or North Sea. And there's actually a recording of that big band, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers big band, live at Montreux and North Sea Jazz Festival. So that was pretty, you know, a pretty special experience and time. And like I said, we did maybe 4 weeks a tour of Europe, and then we came back to the States, and Art went back to a small group. And I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months after that, I get this call from him, and he wants me to be his road manager.
Wow.
Of course, he didn't put it that way. He just said, hey, I need you to go down south with me. And I was like, well, for how long? You know, I don't know. You got to call the manager.
Were you teaching already?
No. Well, I was doing some part-time teaching at the University of Mass in Amherst, which is my school and where I lived. I still lived in Northampton, Mass, which is a little town of western Massachusetts. And so, anyways, what transpired was I went on this one trip of like the Caribbean. We went to like Martinique and Guadeloupe, which are the French Caribbean, and then I think we played Fort Lauderdale. Maybe we went on to Houston or something like that. And at any rate, it led to my becoming his road manager, which lasted for about 2.5 years. So I was watching him. You know, Art Blakey worked 50 weeks out of the year if he could, or 48 or whatever. He was always traveling, always working because he had to. So virtually I'd be watching him play, you know, 5-6 nights a week for almost 2.5 years. Have you seen the book that I wrote about? So
I have it.
That's how I was able to write that book, because, you know, I'm sitting there, my job as road manager was really, I mean, that's a nice name for about 12 different jobs. You're the driver, you're the sound man, you're the MC.
Sound man too?
Yes, very often. I even co-produced a couple of his records because, you know, I heard the band every night, so if I'm in the studio with the engineer, but that's another story. I mean, you know, I was physician. Yeah, sometimes. I was bookkeeper. I was, you know, I mean, that job was, it's kind of like this job, it was 24 hours a day, because when he called you up and said, hey, I need you to take me over here, or whatever, it was really, I came to Berklee in 1982, and the faculty were teaching 30 hours a week, and I was like, man, that's a relief. I've been doing like 60 hours or 80 hours a week as a road manager, so it was like, I get to stay in the place. So that was really the bulk of my time with Art Blakey, was those 2+ years as road manager. So, and I mean, of course, I learned a lot about music and drumming, but I mean, there was so much that you learn from being around Art about life too, you know, and about the music business, about the, you know, the history of jazz. It was really, it was a special time. Wouldn't want to do it again, but a lot of those little lessons too you can find in the Art Blakey.
Do you have a copy that we can showcase here?
I had one copy that I just gave to Iran, and he got a copy. I think I took it home. So,
okay.
But you can find it easily. It's an Alfred Music. It's called Art Blakey's Jazz Messages, and
take note, guys. Art
Blakey's Jazz Messages, Alfred Music. But of course, it's all transcriptions of the stuff he played. I mean, his vocabulary really. But interspersed throughout the musical stuff, the notated drum stuff in there, there's little anecdotes.
Yeah, I read all of them.
Things that he would tell me, or he would tell other members of his band that were very. I mean, I like the one outstanding thing that he told me one night was really long after I was his road manager. But he came to Boston actually to receive an honorary doctorate from Berklee, and so you know. Art Blakey, being Art Blakey, when he got here, you know, Billy Pierce and I were both in the band together, so we were around him when he came. And so he said, "Okay, where do you guys want to go tonight? I want to hang out." So we took him over to a jazz club that used to be in Cambridge. It's gone now. It's called 1369 Jazz Club. And so we took him over there, and of course we ended up down in the office with the owners of the club, sitting around having a drink, talking, whatever, you know. And at some point, I decided I would go upstairs and go to the bar and get a beer, you know. And so I came up, and when you came up out of the basement of the 1369, the stage was right here, and so you had to go by the stage. So as I'm walking by the stage, the drummer, his name is Grover Mooney, was a Boston drummer, good jazz drummer. He said, "Hey, Ramsay, you want to sit in?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, sure, why not?" So I sat and I played a couple of tunes, right? And then I went back downstairs where Art Blakey was, and I didn't know it at the time, but Billy Pierce told me later. He said, when I was playing, Art leaned over to him and said, "Billy, who's that playing up there? Sounds like John." And so I didn't know that, but when I came back down, I sat down next to Art, and he leans over to me, he goes, "John, you know, when you play, you don't have to prove nothing. All you got to do is swing." And that just hit me like boom, because he heard something. He heard me. Yeah, probably I'm up there thinking, "Oh, Art's downstairs, I gotta really play something," right? But it was just a general sort of, you know, approach that probably, whenever I played, I probably felt that way, you know, like I gotta really, and he just.
That's what I do too.
He just heard that, and he you know, and he just said, you know, when you play, and it was a huge lesson, you know. When you play, you don't have to prove anything. All you got to do is swing, and that kind of, if you think about his style, you know, that was his thing, man. He would swing you into bad health, so to speak. So the lessons from Art were sometimes like that, you know. They weren't like, "Hey, play this way." There were plenty of those too, but sometimes they were bigger. So
I think those are the best ones, though.
yeah, because they have an impact and they stay with you usually. So you gotta try to remember that, though. He was my principal teacher. I studied with Alan over a 10-year
10 years.
period. Yeah, I mean, not 10 years, you know, consistently, but what would happen is I would study for some months and I would go on the road, or there was a period where I lived in Florida for a couple of years. But basically from around 1972 and up to and through when I started at Berklee, which I said a minute ago was 1982. So I really studied with him beyond when I came here to teach. I actually went back to study with him, say, between 82 through 84, 85 or something like that. So it was really over more than a 10-year period, 72 to somewhere around 85, 86 maybe. Okay, I'll give you another good story of one of those moments of revelation that, you know, came from Alan this time. And, you know, when I started to study with him, your listeners or your watchers might not know, but I started as a rock drummer. I was a self-taught rock drummer because I grew up in the 60s, right? And so where I grew up was a very rural part of Massachusetts. It was actually on the Vermont border. And I lived next door to a dairy farm. So if I looked out my window, I saw cows. There weren't jazz clubs out there, there was just cows.
Those are really rocks.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm mentioning that because there was no jazz music in my community. And then again, being the 60s and being, you know, like 12 years old in 1962 when I started, I naturally gravitated towards the music of the time, which was rock. And so I basically started by playing in a rock band. I was actually invited to be in the band before I even owned drums.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I had to say, "Hey, Dad, if you buy me drums, I can be in a band."
That's awesome.
Which is another story. But by the time I went to study with Alan, who, by the way, it was suggested to me to study with him by Max Roach.
Wow.
Because Max was at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, which is near to where I grew up. And at that point, I had been playing with some guys who were students at UMass, although I wasn't a student. But I would go to Max Roach's ensemble class and his percussion ensemble class, and he actually let me stay in there, even though I wasn't a registered student. Yeah, he would invite me to play. I would play in a small group. In fact, another funny story. One time I was playing in Max Roach's ensemble, and he came up behind me and he said, "No, don't play it like that." He said, "Play it more like Art Blakey would play it." And I had to turn around and go, "I've never heard Art Blakey." And he was like, "What?" He said, "You better get busy, man." And it was, here we are like 5 years later or whatever, playing Art, but that was before, and it was true, I had never heard Art Blakey. But anyways, what led to me studying with Alan was that when Max was at the University of Mass, he was a full-time teacher there. He lived in Amherst, and this is probably now, I guess it had to be the early 70s. At any rate, I asked Max, I said, "Do you give private lessons? I want to take private lessons with you." He said, "No, I don't teach private lessons." And he didn't actually for the school as well. He had no private students.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of have my theories about why that is, but I don't know. Probably didn't want a lot of Max Roach, little Max Roaches running around. But at any rate, he said, "No, I don't give private lessons, but you should go to Boston and find this guy, Alan Dawson. He's a good teacher. He'd be a good teacher for you." And so I came to this building that we're in now. So this is early 70s, right? And Alan Dawson was teaching here, up on the second floor. It's the woodwind department now, right?
Yeah.
But then it was the percussion department. So I found my way to this building. I went up on the second floor. I found the door, it said Alan Dawson. I knocked on the door. This guy came to the door. He wore like very distinguished, he used to wear these corduroy jumpsuits, not jumpsuits, but jacket suits.
Yeah.
And so this guy answered the door, a very distinguished guy, very well-mannered. So, "Are you Mr. Dawson?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, do you give private lessons outside of Berklee?" He said, "Well, you've come at the right time." He said, "Because I'm going to be leaving Berklee in another few months." And he said, I'll have a private teaching practice at my home in Lexington.
Wow.
And so it's the house I live in now, by the way.
Sergio told me that you...
So I said, "Great, give me your number, I'll call you." And so that's what actually led to me studying with Alan was kind of Max Roach not teaching lessons. So,
Wow.
But the story I was actually getting around to telling you was that after about 3 lessons with Alan, remember now I'm self-taught rock drummer. I've been playing for about 10 years, but maybe 1 lesson from the guy that played in the bar across from my house, right? And so after about 3 or 4 lessons with Alan, I said, "So could you give me an evaluation of my playing?" And of course I wanted to say, "Oh yeah, man, you're the next
great.
Tony Williams, you're going to be just like Harvey Mason." So in his very polite and honest way, he said, "Well," "you're a proficient drummer. You've been playing for about 10 years. He said, but you're really a beginner." "What?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you don't know any rudiments." "Yeah." He said, "You don't know how to read." "Yeah." He said, "You really only know one style of music, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "So for all intents and purposes, you're really a beginner." And that was exactly what I needed to hear, in that moment. It was the truth, and it was only then that it set me on the path to say, okay, I got to get busy. I really got to do some work and learn, so that
you
was...
did, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while, but I mean, that's the most, again, it's like one of those lessons, like the one I mentioned about art, but I mean, it was really important for me to hear, I think, as a young drummer, that kind of honesty, So that began my 10-plus year association with Alan. Now, the thing about Alan is, I mean, I don't know how many people realize this, but he was a tremendous player first. I mean, Max Roach even said, when we knew that we'd have to go to Boston and deal with Alan Dawson, we would be worried. Wow. That's from Max Roach, right? Because, I mean, if you go on probably YouTube, you can find some of the stuff with him, with
Yeah,
Sonny
I saw
Rollins.
him.
But I mean, just amazing technique and facility, but musicality.
Yeah.
But the thing about Alan as a teacher was he could come up with the most creative and ingenious exercises and methods for teaching particular concepts. Like you mentioned the rudimental ritual.
Yeah.
And if you think about that as a composition, really, it's genius. The way he put together almost 90 rudiments in 4 and 8 bar phrases, right, over a bossa nova foot pattern. It's pretty amazing that someone would conceive of that. And of course, everybody knows that he was known for developing 40 different ways of interpreting the syncopation book using 4-way coordination. So he was a very thoughtful guy, you know, and that's why he was such a great teacher, I think. How do I reinforce this method, or how do I, you know, what exercises can I do to teach this concept? And they were real winners. So, which leads me to what I wanted to play for you today. And this is one of the things in the Alan Dawson book that isn't on the audio disc, and it's something I constantly wish I had done a version of, so that, because it's a little bit involved, and if you're just reading the text, you may or you may not get the exercise. So this will be for any of your listeners who want to look at the part of the Alan Dawson book that's the chapter called Soloing Over Song Form, or Soloing Over an AABA tune. In the Alan Dawson book, in the back, I think it's page 48, maybe 48 and 49, there's the exercise about soloing over an AABA song form. And this was a big part of Alan's teaching, because you would use a stick control book interpreting rights and lefts for the drum set, which I'll explain in a minute. But in stick control, you would play the first column, exercises 1 through 12, with an AABA 32 bar form. So it's an 8 bar A melody, another 8 bar A melody repeated, an 8 bar B or a bridge, and then an 8 bar A melody for the last A of the what we call the chorus. So AABA 32 bar song form. Then you would, once you had this AABA form down, you would go to the second column on page 5 in stick control and play an ABAC tune, another 32 bar form. The next page, page 6, column 1, you would do with an ABAB song form. So ABAC tunes are like on Green Dolphin Street, My Romance, Sweet Georgia Brown. Page 6, column 1, ABAB form, those are tunes like Sunny, or Summertime is an ABAB. Blue Boss is ABAB form, still 32 bars. Blue Boss you would do as a swing though. And then you would do page 6, column 2 with a 12 bar tune. And then page 7, column 1 with a 48 bar tune. And after you've done all of those most common song forms, he would have you continue in the stick control book, page 7, column 2, picking any tune. So it could be any of those forms, or it could be some form that you didn't cover. So back to page 5 in stick control exercises 1 through 12, the first column. The way that Alan would put that in the context of an AABA tune, and this is what's spelled out on page 49 of the book, is page 48 actually, this part of it. All the right strokes from stick control. So you know, exercise number 1 is right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Number 2 is left, right, left, right, left. Number 3 is right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. Number 4, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. Number 5, you're going to put the page up, right? Okay, so all the right strokes equal alternating hands on the snare drum. All the left strokes equal the bass drum. And of course we're using jazz 8th note or swung 8th note interpretation. And the hi-hat's playing on beats 2 and 4. So number 1, right, left, is going to be interpreted like 1, 2. Number 2, left, right would be 1. Number 3 is 4. Number 5 5 is a paradiddle, and then 6, 7, and 8 are permutations of a paradiddle. So these are the ones that probably will take the most work kind of drilling apart from the whole exercise. So number 5 paradiddle is going to be... interpretation of the stickings, and you need to spend time on just that alone. Don't even think about the song form or the whole larger picture, but just work on the coordination. That concept of rights equal alternating hands snare drum, lefts equal the bass drum is not a rigid interpretation. So for example, with like the paradiddle, where you have right, it's really only imperative that you alternate where you have 2 rights in a row. So right, right. So it's like right hand lead. So where I have a single right, I'm just playing a single right. 2 rights together, I alternate. So putting it all together, on page 49, you're going to see that little boxed in square there where it says, after the text of explanation, the way that Alan had you put this in the context of the AABA 32 bar form was you play 4 bars a time plus 4 bars of the exercise. That equals 8 bars. That equals the first A of the tune, right? So 4 bars a time, 4 bars of exercise number 1. First A of the tune, 4 bars a time again. 4 bars of exercise number 2 equals the second A. 4 bars of time again plus 4 bars of exercise number 3 equals the B or the bridge, right? 4 bars of time again plus 4 bars of exercise number 4, that equals the last A of the first chorus, right? So with exercises 1 through 12, you'd have a total of 3 choruses. AABA, AABA, AABA. 3 choruses. Now, the challenge to all of this is that while you're doing all that, you would have to sing the melody of the tune aloud. So what tune? Any AABA tune. Take the A Train. Satin Doll. Well, you needn't. There's a million of them. And then for the 4th chorus, he would have you play a chorus of solo, still singing the tune aloud. So you'd have a total of 4 choruses, 3 choruses of the exercises, 1 chorus of solo, total of 4 choruses. So I'll do all of that, and we'll see what happens. So it helps to be looking at stick control. So let's use Take the A Train. We'll make it easy. again?
Oh, man.
Okay, so you get that down, and one other suggestion, while you're working on the hand and foot coordination, right, that's one part of it, do that, and then in the meantime, while you're away from the drums, work on the melody. Get the CD, make sure, most people are real good on the A section, they get to the bridge and they kind of, it gets a little vague. So work on the tune apart from the exercises before you try to put the two things together. And then with a little work, you'll be there. Okay, so you mentioned the rudimental ritual, and I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that have to do with that. And this is, again, was Alan's teaching method, that two things about the ritual. One is, well, it's more than two things, but the first thing is you would go through all those individual rudiments with Alan, basically 3 of those per lesson. And only when you had covered all the 26 American rudiments, all the Swiss rudiments, and all of the innovations, when you'd gone through those individually, playing them each from slow to fast gradually with sticks, once you'd done that, he would say, now review them all with the brushes, which was the first step to learning the rudimental ritual, because the idea of the rudimental ritual is one, that it's played with brushes, and two, that you memorize it. So that idea of reviewing all the rudiments with the brushes, you would do them the same way you would with sticks. Like, let's take a single drag, for example. You'd play it from slow to fast gradually. So go through all the 26, all the 15 or 16 Swiss rudiments, all the innovations, reviewing them all with the brushes. Now, once you had done that, and only when you had done that, Alan would say, okay, now begin to memorize the rudimental ritual. And in those days, there was no book there was no written version. So the way that it would work is he would play it for you in your lesson, and you would record it on a cassette player. Remember those? Probably not.
I do.
and then you would take the tape home and memorize it or learn it by ear. So he had some suggestions of how to best accomplish that, and it basically was that you remember they're all 4 and 8 bar phrases, so you kind of memorize it 4-bar phrase by 4-bar phrase. So the first 8 bars is easy because it's 4 bars of the right rough and then 4 bars of the left rough. So the first 8 bars memorized. Now the first place where you really need to kind of dwell for a little bit is that single drag, because it's 3/8 phrasing that goes over the bar line. So 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the rhythm. So you would just play that larger shape without the grace notes, and just keep playing that over and over again until you could kind of feel that 3/8 figure. So then once you had that memorized, you could move on to the next one, which is a double dragon. So the memorization aspect of it is, you can look at the notation for reference, but you don't want to get paper dependent or stuck looking at it. And use the audio from the book, because it's on the CD, as a reinforcement for the oral part of it, right? So it's really meant to be memorized and not read. So those two things, playing it with brushes and then memorizing it. So, of course, once you have it memorized and you've been playing it for 10 or 20 or 15 years, you start to look for new things to do with it. So just a challenge for some of you guys, like you. I know you'll rise to this. I've been doing it this way now. So. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, on and so forth. So don't do that when you're not warmed up. So, I mean, you would think of, you know, other bass drum hi-hat type of ostinatos maybe. You could also move the rudiments around. So memorizing it is one thing, and certainly getting it down with the brushes, that's the first step, but then see what else you can think of to challenge yourself after. Okay? You want to try it?